Hello and welcome to the second video. This is the second part of nearest neighbor. If you haven't seen the last video, don't worry, this video will be self-contained, and so this part will focus on the implementation of the nearest neighbor algorithm. And let's see. So first of all, we will take a list, and it contains names of people and their distances to the origin, for example, or some point. So if you have seen the last video, we have computed these distances relative to the music class, right? So John is 36 kilometers away from the music class, Liz is 32, and so on. Now we want to find out another list which contains the names of the nearest neighbor. So our output would look something similar to, for example, John, and then we will have, for example, Lisa, and it will contain, for example, 4 kilometers, and so on. So let's start, right? So first we will iterate through every item in the list of attendees. So in that we can do in the Python simply by using a for loop. I call it P1 because it's a person, right? It's the first person, for example, John. I take John, and now I have to compute the distance of John to every person and keep the minimum, right? So to keep the minimum, I will create a variable called minimum distance, right? And I will, for example, give him a number right now, a very big number, right? And why I have given him the big number, you will see in a minute. And the next thing will be the name of the person who actually was that minimum. And then after that we have to iterate through this list one more time, right? And this time this time you see that, for example, if we are running this loop for the first time, so P1 will be John and P2 will be Lisa, then in the second iteration of P2 it will be Ellen, then Gary, and so on. So we will compute the distance to each to P1 and P2 in each iteration of the list. Let's see what's inside P1 and P2 if we run this. Now you see we have in the first iteration we have John, then John, Lisa, and you see this is the first iteration of the outer loop, and this one is the second iteration of the outer loop, right? And now our task is to compute the distances between these two guys and take the minimum. The important thing is we don't want to compute this distance between John and John, but it's coming up, so we have to get rid of this. In order to do that, we have to say, for example, P1 of 0 equals P2 of 0. Then in that case we don't want to compute because the distance from one person to himself will be minimum. So that is something we don't want. We want the nearest neighbor, not the person himself. So we want to continue here. So we will skip the computation. And now if we print this guy again, it won't contain John and John to himself again. And if you look here, Lisa don't exist. And the next thing will be to compute the distances, and it is contained in the second index. So we'll simply say P1 of 1 minus P2 of 1, right? Because it is on the first index. And if we print the distances, now we see we have these distances, but it also has these negative values. So in order to get rid of them, we will just take the absolute values, and now we have these nice distances. Now we want to pick only the minimum distance between the first iteration. To do that, we will make an if statement here, and we'll say that the minimum distance in this iteration, if this is less than the distance we computed, well, let's do it the other way, right? If the minimum distance is greater than the distance we computed, then we need to update this minimum distance, right? Because we need the minimum distance. And if we do that, we will also update the name of the guy who has this minimum distance. And for example, in our case, it's P2 of 0, right? And in the end, let's print the name of the guy, minimum name and minimum distance. And let's run this. Okay. Oh, okay, so we have some problem here. Well, let's see. So we have computed this distance. Oh, so we have to compute the absolute. We said we will take the absolute value of the distance. Oh, yeah, perfect. So now you see Nick, and we will print the name of the guy who we computed this distance with, which is P1 of 0 here, because it's the outer loop, right? We'll put him in the first, right? And now let's see. So the distance between John and Nick is 2, Lisa and Mary is 0. Let's see. Let's check. So Lisa is 32 and Mary is 32. So check. Yes, they live together, maybe in the same house, and so on. So now you see we have a nice list of nearest neighbors, right? Suppose we don't want it to print this and wanted it to be in an array format, right? So we can say NN and we will make an array, right, an empty list. And on each iteration, we'll just put this guy into that list. Very simple, right? And we will make this a nested list, right? You see? So this is a list of 3 items, and this is a list containing a list of lists, right? And now in the end we will just print the neural network sorry, not nearest neighbor list, and you see we have a nice list format which we can iterate over again and again. So that was a very simple and very naive way to nearest neighbor. There are other ways which are a lot more efficient and clever, but we will go through them maybe in the next video. Until then, bye.